this was a decision for the people of South Carolina to make regarding that flag. My position has been very clear on this from the beginning, and that is if someone is flying that flag, especially on official grounds as a symbol of white supremacy and racism, then it should come down. And the people of South Carolina have worked together and decided what that flag means to them, and they've made their decision. My concern is we should not be going to monuments, memorials, battlefield sites, cemeteries, and starting to cleanse these historically significant sites of the presence of the flag or any other symbol that is offensive merely because it's offensive. We have to learn about our history in all of its fullness, including the things that are hurtful.
But flying a flag, what difference does it make that it's in a relic room? If this flag is insulting to some people, every time they walk into the Capitol or past the Capitol or past the State House, that they're insulted by it. So why, I don't understand what's wrong with moving it. It's still going to be displayed. It's still going to be part of history. You can still teach the history.
Well, look again, the people of South Carolina have made a bipartisan decision regarding that flag. The question now is what happens next. So, for example, we now have a controversy over people privately placing their own little small Confederate flags that they've purchased at national cemeteries where Confederate soldiers are buried. That's the kind of thing where we're beginning to talk about, we're talking about censoring history at that point and trying to, we can't just do that on the basis that some people are offended. History can be hurtful, and we need to be able to communicate it in its fullness.
We're not cleansing history, we're not erasing history, but what we are simply saying is that this State House behind me doesn't belong to one individual. It doesn't belong to one group of people.
Well, what about specifically to his point where he talks about graves of Confederate soldiers? And you know, we spoke about this amongst our group tonight with my producers, and we talked about what if someone, you know, because I saw people flying the flag on their trucks today and walking around. What if someone carried a swastika flag around, or put a swastika flag on a grave or at a gravesite? How would someone feel about that? Because that is a symbol of hate as well.
I have the ability to judge you, and I have the ability to have my opinion about what you're doing, as asinine or as ignorant as it may be. If someone wants to fly the Confederate flag on their own vehicle, in their yard, on their truck, painted on top of their car, that's their prerogative. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the House of the people that represents us all.
But I think he says that the people here, he said that you've made a bipartisan decision in this state, and I think he's okay with that. He just doesn't want history to be whitewashed. But I don't know if putting a symbol of hate.
That's a red herring. Nobody's whitewashing history. What we are doing is saying that we understand everybody's heritage. And not only that, but my former colleagues in the South Carolina House of Representatives actually showed empathy last night. And that was just the most amazing thing. So here we are. It's a new day in South Carolina. It really is.
Yeah, I want to hear that. David, I want you to respond to this. I want everyone to see this extraordinary moment. It's from last night's debate. I want you to listen to State Senator Jenny Horn.
I cannot believe that we do not have the heart in this body to do something meaningful, such as take a symbol of hate off these grounds on Friday. And if any of you vote to amend, you are ensuring that this flag will fly beyond Friday. And for the widow of Senator Pinckney and his two young daughters, that would be adding insult to injury. And I will not be a part of it.
And I misspoke. It's State Representative Jenny Horn. What do you make of that, David? She's speaking from the heart. She says, this offends the people I love, my friends.
I mean, there's no question. That's a powerful statement that she's made, and I believe the vote was, what, 94-20, something like that. So that was a bipartisan vote. The debate, honestly, is moving on from that flag. I think that flag was going to come down, and that became very, very clear very soon after that horrible, evil shooting. That flag was going to come down. The debate is not ending with that flag. There's still a Confederate monument there that is larger even than that flag. There are monuments and memorials. There are battlefields, which are open-air museums these vast open-air museums of the war where flags have come down. Why? Because we're saying they're innately, inherently offensive. Well, they're also a part of our history. There are reasons why you display the flags and the artifacts of history. And so we've moved well beyond that. And the people of South Carolina have made their decision. They made it in a way that was peaceful, with civil debate. I applaud them for that. But this debate is far from over, and we haven't established a principle upon which we're going to make those decisions.